My name's Jim Todd, and I've lived in Missoula since 1970. I'm a retired professor from art and humanities professor from the University of Montana. I've been retired now for about 8 years, and I'm primarily a printmaker and a painter. I decided to take this particular painting to talk about just because I finished it about a year ago. The title of it is Blind Mexican Musicians. I suppose I decided to take it because I'm fairly satisfied with it. I try to work on things until I am satisfied with them, but every artist knows that certain pieces have more of a kind of resolution than others. And I guess in that sense, this picture, which took about a year and a half to finish, feels fairly resolved to me. I work from my fantasy and from photographs and often combine the two things. In fact, probably most of my work is from fantasy. And in that respect, this painting is an exception to that because it's a derivative image. It's taken from a photograph by a Mexican photographer, Casasola, who died, I think, in the 1940s. And this particular book of his photographs was, in a sense, a kind of photographic history of Mexico during the 20th century. It was a very impressive book and impressive photographs and an impressive pictorial history of Mexico. In any case, he had one photograph in this black and white photograph in the book that was called Blind Mexican Musicians. That was a picture of some apparently students at a school. There wasn't much information under the caption, and the picture is rearranged to some degree. The photograph was black and white, so the colors are all my own, and the background composition with the two doors and the floor are all my own constructions, and there was a director standing in front of the group in the photograph which I removed. But then I decided to stay very close to the portraits of the individual musicians because that's what moved me about the photograph. What was interesting to me was that even though one could discern, looking closely at the faces, one could discern the blindness of each musician, that either their eyes were empty or there's that kind of vacant, distracted quality that one sees in the face of blind people sometimes. They all had that, but what was striking was that despite their blindness, their common blindness, was the individuality of each of these people came through in any case. So you have, the extremes of somebody like this fellow up here who has a kind of simple sort of quality and is posed rather stiffly. The other interest for me, of course, was that I've always been very interested in music. It's probably my second love in the arts, and I was an amateur musician when I was young. I think the other thing about this picture is it sort of synthesizes a number of things that have been of interest to me. Mexico, music, social conditions of human beings in the world, race issues, and then also I think as the longer I worked, the more interested I got in color. A lot of my early prints are black and white and remain so. I still like black and white a great deal, but my work kind of ranges between very stark black and white work and highly colorful work. And I think I got more of my influence in color from Mexico than I did from Europe in the long run. I mean, I learned European traditions like most American artists, but as I became more interested in Mexico, I started paying more attention to their color and there, especially the peasant art, there was a brightness of their color that was very emotionally expressive to me, and I've tried to learn how to incorporate that into my work. The composition is my own, that is the setting, the floor, the doors. There was in the original photograph, the setting isn't altogether different, but the setting had one door, it was uncolored, it had a director standing to the right, and so forth. And so what I did is I made the picture more symmetrical. I put the musicians in the center, and then constructed two doors to add to the symmetry, and then developed this kind of odd third-dimensional perspective on the floor, which is deliberately slightly off, so that when you look down, it looks like you have almost an aerial view, and then when you move up, it tends to level in front of you. And I've gotten interested in these sort of odd combinations of perspective, that is somewhat third-dimensional, somewhat two-dimensional, trying to figure out ways of harmonizing them, but at the same time creating a sense of dissonance. And if I were to compare that with something, again, it's kind of an influence of music on my art in a way, is that I've always been interested in the musical dissonance of jazz and certain modern classical music, what they call atonal harmonies. And you have this slight sense of something being not quite right, but it harmonizes enough so that it's not wrong. And I sense the same kind of thing in visual things. Often my pictures, even when they're literal, they'll have sort of odd symbolic things that run through them, and because they're unconscious, I don't necessarily know what they're about. Sometimes I'm able to figure it out afterwards. Like I knew these doors meant something, and I still haven't quite figured out why. Now, part of it, as you say, is a formal matter. That is, I have to figure out what colors will harmonize with the blues and the browns. And I want, since the picture was symmetrical, I didn't want it to be so symmetrical that it was tedious or too repetitive, and so by having the red and the green door, I jar that symmetry a little bit. So that's just a formal concern. But I do think that the doors symbolize something, and I haven't been able to figure out quite what. And what I found with these kind of unconscious symbols is that sometimes after I'm done with a painting, I'll be trying to figure it out, and when the painting is done, I'll say, oh, that's what it's about. But sometimes I can't ever get it figured out, and I'll be looking at something maybe for 2 or 3 years, and then bingo, something will click to me, that makes me understand what it was about. But these doors, I don't know yet.
They haven't clicked yet.
They haven't clicked yet, no. I'm Jim Todd, and this is my painting, Blind Mexican Musicians.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, you're welcome.